right. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It is a great pleasure to be here with three great colleagues. Well, two great colleagues, and Dominic LeBlanc. No, sorry. Okay. You guys rolling? No. Let me start again. Straight from the top. It's a great pleasure to be here with David Miles, who is hopefully will sing later on and entertain us. Wayne Long, Secretary of State of Finance, and Dominic LeBlanc, who is many things, including our Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, responsible for negotiations internationally, and a colleague above and beyond. I'd like to thank Chris, Erica, and Bill for hosting us here at Maple Leaf Homes, welcoming us, but also for what you've been doing. And I'm going to expand a bit on this. Let me start by just acknowledging that their team, the team here at Maple Leaf Homes, has been building for over 3 decades. And it's a story that started in building homes for mining camps in the far north, and a place where I know well, they know well. The cold conditions and the short construction seasons make traditional home building difficult. So what they did is they started to build homes indoors in controlled conditions with the precision and strength required to withstand the harsh elements in the north. Et cette même innovation est bien vivante ici, dans vos installations de Fredericton. Vous perfectionnez votre savoir-faire en fabrication des maisons usinées. Grâce à des machines de pointe, aux technologies les plus récentes et au talent local, vous bâtissez plus de maisons, plus rapidement, plus économes en énergie et à un prix abordable for les Canadiens et Canadiennes. At this facility, construction is active 22 hours a day. Uses softwood lumber from across the Atlantic provinces, from Quebec, British Columbia, New Brunswick-made kitchens, which we just tested out, fully endorse them, and engineered wood from Quebec. Maple Leaf Homes builds energy-efficient apartments, schools, remote camps, and hundreds of homes every year. We need more of them. Once completed, these housing units are shipped as far west as Manitoba, as far north to Nunavut. Vous démontrez une fois de plus que les constructeurs canadiens peuvent être des chefs de file en matière de qualité et de savoir-faire. Félicitations pour ce que vous avez bâti et pour tout ce que vous bâtirez encore. Now, Canada's new government is deploying a similar combination of innovation, speed, and long hours through Build Canada Homes. Build Canada Homes is a new entity. It leverages federal public lands, a large portfolio of projects, highly competitive financing to help create scale in a new factory-built housing industry that can help Canada build millions more of affordable homes. This is an industry that can cut building times by 50%, reduce costs by 20%, and lower emissions by a further 20%. And it's consistent with Canada's history. Our history is one of adventurers, risk takers, and above all, builders. Our country was forged by Indigenous peoples and voyageurs who built vast trading networks from coast to coast to coast before the Americans had even left St. Louis. Following the Second World War, Canada was ambitious, determined, and united in a mission to build big things that would include the St. Lawrence Seaway, the Trans-Canada Highway, Expo 67, and the CN Tower. But Canadians also built new neighborhoods for hundreds of thousands of returning veterans. And we expanded our universities, such as UNB. UNB saw its enrollment almost double. En ce moment charnière, c'est à cette histoire de construction que nous devons revenir et que nous devons encourager. Because Canada is facing a hinge moment. The world's more divided and dangerous. The global trading system is being rewired threatening Canadian jobs and businesses. The budget released last week, it estimates that U.S. tariffs and the uncertainty that they're costing Canadians represents around 1.8% of our GDP. Let me translate that. That's about $50 billion lost from our economy, the equivalent of $1,300 for every Canadian. And this is happening fast. It's a rupture, not a transition. And it means that our economic strategy needs to change just as dramatically and rapidly. That new strategy is at the core of Canada's new federal budget. The budget builds Canada strong by unleashing over $1 trillion in total investments in Canada over the next 5 years. Those investments alone will increase Canada's GDP by over 3.5%. Again, let me translate. That's $3,500 for every Canadian worker, more than twice of what the Americans are taking from us. And we are just getting started. Le budget 2025 est la nouvelle stratégie économique dont le Canada a besoin pour relever ce défi et en sortir encore plus fort. Un Canada confiant qui prend son avenir en main. Pour y arriver, on doit s'attaquer aux pressions économiques de longue date qui vont au-delà des droits de douane. Our budget makes generational investments to build at home, including right here in New Brunswick. Budget 2025 includes a new $5 billion Trade Diversification Corridors Fund, which will improve Canada's access to international markets by investing in new port, new airport, and railway infrastructure. And that means projects such as the St. John Trade Corridor and the critical minerals port at Port of Belledune. We're building one Canadian economy, turbocharged by new infrastructure that connects our regions, diversifies our markets, makes us an energy superpower, restores affordability to housing, and secures our community. Nous créons de nouvelles stratégies allant des minéraux critiques au train à très grande vitesse en passant par un nuage souverain, afin de générer des dizaines de milliards de dollars d'investissements supplémentaires tout en créant les conditions d'une économie plus connectée et plus productive. Notre nouvelle stratégie industrielle de défense permettra de tirer parti de l'augmentation de plus de 80 milliards de dollars des dépenses de défense au cours des 5 prochaines années pour bâtir l'industrie canadienne. Et notre stratégie de compétitivité climatique contribuera à générer des centaines de milliards de dollars d'investissement dans les infrastructures nucléaires, hydroélectriques, éoliennes, de stockage de réseaux électriques afin de faire du Canada un chef de file de l'économie à faible émission de carbone. Nous bâtirons des infrastructures locales, notamment des hôpitaux, des réseaux de transport en commun, des espaces récréatifs, des centres des arts, et ce, grâce au fonds Bâtir des collectivités fortes qui prévoit un investissement de 50 milliards de dollars. Et cela comprend de nouveaux financements pour construire la place Marcel-François Richard, un lieu de rassemblement destiné à célébrer la culture acadienne sur le site de drapeau acadien géant de Beau Rivage au Nouveau-Brunswick. Et je crois que M. Leblanc l'a dévoilé dimanche dernier. Oui? Samedi. Oui, samedi dernier. Now, we're going to build. But it's not just about what we build, it's also how we build. And that's what I want to focus for the balance of my remarks. We're going to build inclusively, in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We will build in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs. We will build sustainably, because reducing emissions isn't just a moral duty, it's an economic imperative. And above all, we will build Canadian by becoming our own best customer. With our new Buy Canadian policy, whenever the federal government spends, we will select Canadian suppliers by default, rather than using the current best efforts approach. And this new approach, will extend to all federal agencies, all Crown corporations, such as Build Canada Homes, such as Alto High Speed Rail, and such as our spending from our new Defence Investment Agency. Our Buy Canadian policy will include federal infrastructure spending, ensuring that as much as possible of that $70 billion we're planning to invest in the roads, bridges, and community centres on which Canadians rely comes from Canadian-made suppliers. And in those cases, when domestic suppliers aren't available, purchases will be required to include Canadian content or to be sourced from trusted partners. And those cases will be the exception, not the norm. And they will require ministerial approval. Pour être considérées comme des fournisseurs canadiens, les entreprises devront avoir une présence réelle au Canada et dans les chaînes d'approvisionnement canadiennes, pas seulement une société écran. Now, being our own best customer will put more of every public dollar back into our economy, creating good Canadian jobs, Canadian careers, using Canadian resources and benefiting Canadian communities. It'll make a big difference for workers here in New Brunswick, including at businesses like Maple Leaf Homes. Quand une commande sera passée pour de l'acier, de bois d'œuvre ou de la machinerie lourde, elle ira à des entreprises de Saskatoon, de Trois-Rivières et de Fredericton. Et elle transformera ces nouvelles commandes de maisons, de bâtiments et d'équipements de défense en contrat en carrière et en meilleur salaire pour les travailleurs canadiens. Now, for smaller businesses, we're also launching a new procurement program that provides specialized, streamlined support for those Canadian small and medium-sized businesses that are trying to break into the federal market. This is good for everyone. It'll improve competition for Canadian contracts. It'll strengthen local supply chains, and it will build our industries from construction to energy, technology, and clean manufacturing. Nous donnerons à nos entreprises la confiance dont elles ont besoin pour investir dans leur développement et leur croissance. Nous serons nos propres meilleurs clients, afin que le soudeur ou l'ingénieur nouvellement diplômé ait une carrière de grande qualité qui l'attend ici au Canada. Le nouveau gouvernement du Canada fait cette annonce, mais cela s'inscrit dans le cadre d'une mission plus large que chaque Canadien et Canadienne, à sa manière, fait progresser. Les Canadiens qui ont acheté plus de vins locaux, comme au Québec, où les ventes de vins locaux ont augmenté de près de 60%. Notre gouvernement a éliminé les obstacles fédéraux au commerce intérieur plus tôt cette année, et les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires ont commencé à éliminer leurs obstacles également, ce qui permettra de débloquer des milliards de dollars supplémentaires dans les échanges commerciaux à l'intérieur de nos frontières. Our Buy Canadian strategy is part of a larger movement amongst Canadian businesses, a movement that's putting maple leaf stickers on grocery aisles, a movement that's increasing sales and coupons for Canadian-made products, and a movement that's choosing Canadian suppliers for new contracts. And one implication of Buy Canadian is that we need a more unified Canadian economy than ever. So the federal government is leading the effort to remove internal barriers so that Canadian products and services can flow easily across the country. Notre plan est ambitieux et audacieux. C'est exactement ce dont notre pays a besoin, et nous ferons ce qu'il faut. Now, in conclude and just observe that these challenges are broad, and there's two potential responses to the challenges that we face as a country. And the first is to stick to the plans designed for the old world, hunker down, slash the deficit, and wait for the trickle down. But in order to do that would mean getting rid of our key social programs, or the federal government eliminating all the health, education, and social transfers that we make to the provinces and territories, and at the same time not making these big investments in what we need right now. We choose a different path, to invest boldly in our future, just as Canadians have done in the past. We choose Canada. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous, et nous bâtirons un pays plus grand et plus fort que jamais. Et ce, avec du bois d'œuvre canadien, de l'acier canadien et de l'aluminium canadien. C'est notre pays, c'est votre avenir. Avec le budget 2025, nous reprenons le contrôle pour bâtir un Canada fort. With budget 2025, we'll build Canadian, build New Brunswick strong, build Canada strong. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup et vive le Canada. And I'll be happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the question portion of the press conference. Allow me to now commencer les questions. Please tell us your name and what media you're from. Première question.
Jacques Poitras from CBC News. How do you make sure these buy Canadian mechanisms you're talking about putting in place don't violate our international trade agreements?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we've done a review of all our free trade obligations to ensure that they are designed consistent with that. And we will, related to that, if I may, Jacques, we'll be making adjustments to the way the Canadian International Trade Tribunal operates, which is something that's internal to Canada. So many of the constraints are actually self-imposed on ourselves. And we're going to make the adjustments to that CITT framework so that we have the ability to fully deliver Buy Canadian.
And how do you make sure buying Canadian doesn't drive up prices for construction and manufacturing?
Well, one of the big messages here is that we are going to build this country, and we are going to build this country for decades. So we've got a lot of skilled people in front of me and behind me, around me. In fact, everyone but me is skilled in this room. But we're going to need a lot more of them. And so one of the points is to be clear up front on the scale of what the ambitions are for the country, that the money is there, that we're going to approve these major projects, that we're going to drive large-scale home building, affordable home building in Canada, very much relying on factory-built housing in order to do so. So that means an opportunity for companies to compete for those contracts, but also to expand. And very importantly, for younger Canadians or Canadians thinking of changing careers, a clear opportunity for large-scale need for people in the skilled trades. And that's one of our core messages. And we're going to follow up with that specifically with scaling up our apprenticeship programs that we provide, in some cases with provinces, including through unions and post-secondary education institutions as well. Thank you.
Hello, Prime Minister. It's Lindsay Armstrong with Canadian Press. You said last week the risk in your budget is that Canada's economy won't grow fast enough. Yeah. Can you tell Canadians how their lives will be affected if that growth does not come to pass? Yeah, well, one way to answer that is something I referenced earlier in the speech, and it's contained in the budget, which is because both the scale of American tariffs, and just for reference that we have the best deal of any country, but there's still material tariffs, and we know it here in New Brunswick, across the country. It's affecting the forest products sector. It affects the steel aluminum sector. It's affecting the cabinetry sector now. So the impact of that, plus the uncertainty about what might happen next, and that's an uncertainty that's shared around the world. All of that means that our economy a few years out is likely to be almost 2% lower, 1.8%. You translate in terms of what does that mean for Canadians, that's $1,300 for every Canadian.
So the government, we're not going to take that. We're going to get that back and then some. And the way we do it is to build more homes, to build nation-building projects, to build cleaner energy, to build out this country, and that's what we're doing. So that's, in many respects, what's at stake here.
The energy sector doesn't appear thrilled about the budget. How can you succeed in turning Canada into an energy superpower when the budget didn't provide any of the 5 relief measures that the sector had asked for in its Build Canada Now letter earlier this year?
Well, I'm not sure I totally recognize that characterization, if I may. The first is, let's look at Canada's position as an energy superpower, and let me generalize it. If you're a superpower, you're able to do more than one thing. And Canada can do many things in energy. We have our electricity grid is 85% clean. That's because of hydro, it's because of nuclear, other renewable power. We have an enormous opportunity to scale up that clean grid. I met with Premier Holt, as you may know, this morning. We spent a lot of time talking about how New Brunswick can help be part of the solution for that, whether that's more nuclear, whether that's interties with more clean power that's coming from other provinces, Quebec, potentially Nova Scotia, and just linking in together. So there's a huge element. What's in the budget for that? Enormous incentives in order for that to move. Clean energy tax credit confirmed in the budget. I won't go into all the details, but something called the super productivity deduction, which is additive. You stack these on top of them. It's enormous incentives for that to move forward. The second point, and I'm just going to talk about, you can do more than one thing, and then I should hand to your colleague for his question, is in conventional energy. Back in June, this country shipped our first LNG shipment to Asia. We will ship 50 million tons to Asia by the end of this decade, and potentially double that again. And part of what's happening with the major projects is we are making that possible. We're making the speed with which we can do that possible, and we're doing it in a way with the companies, obviously, with Indigenous partners who are full partners in all these projects, in a way that's sustainable. So the emissions of these projects are in the top quartile, so or the top decile, so amongst the lowest emissions for the actual production and transportation of that LNG in the world. So that's how we're moving forward, and we're making all of that. We're making all of that possible. So the investment is large scale, and we're moving forward. Thank you.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Frédéric Camarano de Radio-Canada. Vous avez sûrement vu le reportage de mes collègues d'enquête sur la pêche illégale de homards. Je me demandais ce que votre gouvernement compte faire pour contrer cette pêche illégale.
On fait beaucoup contre la pêche illégale. Ils sont des règles. Il faut que tous les gens suivent des règles. Je sais que c'est le premier jour de la saison de la pêche aujourd'hui. J'espère que je pourrai assister à Nouvelle-Écosse à cette beau jour.
D'autre part, dans le dernier budget, vous n'avez pas inclus de cible sur la réduction de GES pour 2030. Pourquoi?
Il y a déjà une cible pour le Canada pour la réduction des gaz à effet de serre. C'est de 40 à 45% par rapport au passé. Ça existe encore. C'est dans notre NDC, contribution nationale, notre plan de COP. Alors, ça existe, et dans le budget, c'est un plan de la compétitivité du climat. Alors, il y a une relation, mais ce n'est pas nécessairement la même chose. Merci.
Hi there, this is Anna Mandan with Global News. Premier Holt, before your meeting with her, had identified softwood lumber as a focus she wanted to talk to. It's a concern here. What update can you provide on how the federal government is supporting New Brunswick softwood lumber producers?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And the Premier and I did discuss this during our meeting, after you heard her comment there. So we released in the summer a series of measures which included capital for softwood lumber producers to invest in their business, pivot to new markets, as well as short-term liquidity and support for workers. So we released that. Subsequent to that, Minister LeBlanc and some colleagues met with the Premier of British Columbia to develop the next phase of that, or ideas around the next phase, which we are in the process of doing. We have a First Ministers meeting, so the Prime Minister, the Premiers, Mr. LeBlanc will be at that as well. It's a virtual meeting. We have it, from my memory, I believe it's a week today, it's thereabouts. And one of the issues we'll talk about is that plan that we would expect to release shortly thereafter, sort of a week thereafter. So there's more support coming for the sector. But let me say two things to put it in the context of today. One of the areas for the industry is going to be more Maple Leaf homes with our hosts and similar companies across the country, companies that have more than 80% of the product are Canadian. They're buying Canadian softwood, they're fashioning them into homes, and they're building, and we are going to scale that considerably through Build Canada Homes. So that's the first thing. And then the second, related to that, is making sure that the Canadian market and building standards are consistent across the country. So Canadian softwood, Canadian products, Canadian housing can flow readily from coast to coast to coast.
Both the NDP and the Greens are undecided as to whether they will support your budget. Are you open to giving those parties any concessions to get your budget passed?
Well, I think that there's a lot in the budget for everyone, and align with the objectives of those parties. We have had discussions with those parties in advance of the budget, and a number of things are in the budget that were reinforced by the desires of both those parties. And there's other things that the government can do. There's the budget and then the ongoing business of government, and those priorities are there. And look, I'm a big believer, and the government is a big believer in working with Parliament, listening, getting ideas. We don't think we have a monopoly on all the good ideas. And so when we hear new ones, we have incorporated them and will continue to do so. Monsieur.
Hi, it's John Chillibeck from the Telegraph Journal. Hi. Some New Brunswick officials are concerned about the major project lists that it hasn't really included New Brunswick. For instance, SMRs in Ontario are getting a couple billion. We see some help for the Ring of Fire in Ontario, not with the Sisson Mine here in New Brunswick. Port of Montreal and Churchill seem to be getting help, but not the Port of St. John. Can you speak to that? Is New Brunswick going to be part of this major projects?
Yeah, thank you for the question. New Brunswick is very much part of this. And let's just take a step back and then address some of the specifics, which is this is not a one and done. It's not one round of projects and then we move forward with those. This is a living list. We develop more. We've got big strategies that then also have implications for provinces across the country. So that's the first thing. And the next round of major projects is going to be announced later this week on Thursday. So there you go, be announced on Thursday. We've had a number of conversations with the province. I've had a number of conversations with the Premier about major projects here that meet the criteria. They strengthen Canada's autonomy. They diversify our economy. They're built with Indigenous partners. They're consistent with their climate goals, and they have a real economic return. And so you would expect to see some of those in the announcement later this week. That's first point. And then the second is, if you take, well, I'll make a final point, which is just when you look at, for example, Energy East, Wind West, right? Which was announced the first time. It's a broad strategy. It's all connected. So yes, there is a considerable offshore wind in Nova Scotia, but there are a series of interties that are necessary, very much including New Brunswick, with PEI, with Quebec and others. And what's that going to mean for some of watching at home? It's going to mean more reliable power, cheaper power. and an ability to expand the economy, create jobs here in New Brunswick. Thank you.
Okay, so of the three I mentioned Thursday, we can expect.
Well, you can
three?
come to Prince Rupert, and you can be the first to hear.
All right. What's your government's plan for imposing the federal backstop on jurisdictions whose industrial carbon price does not meet the benchmark?
So thank you for the question. So what we said in the budget, what we are going to do is we are going to tighten the federal backstop, the rules around the federal backstop, which is industrial carbon price for others, and particularly so that the gap that sometimes exists between provincial level pricing and that backstop closes, and we'll also lengthen the horizon for the backstop. So there'll be more coming on that. Yeah. Well, it'll come in coming week. Again, we want you to keep coming back to federal press conferences. We don't want to throw it all out there. I mean, we put a lot out in the budget. Sir.
Mike Landry, All New Brunswick. You previously said you were open to quotas on the softwood lumber as a possible solution. I'm just wondering, has your position changed on that front when it comes to a possible quota? Is that more or less important for you now?
I'm trying to recall when I said that. Do you have a date and time? Look, these solutions, I'll say this, which is that to the extent to which, the U.S. has had agreements, new agreements for what are called 232 sectors, so strategic sectors like softwood to get to softwood. They have tended to have quotas with a tariff inside the quota, which is unusual, to be clear, relative to historic trade practice, and then another much higher tariff outside the quota. So those are, when the Americans have negotiated agreements, they've tended to look like that. So we understand that, and it's a question of what's in the best interests of our industry, and relative to other aspects of the negotiation when it resumes.
Just as a follow-up, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around when it comes to the forestry sector in New Brunswick. It's 1 out of 49 firms are involved with the forestry sector.
Yeah, a hugely important sector. Yeah, no,
$2 billion
100%.
go to the United States. I'm just wondering if you can explain a bit more, looking at that focus, how a Buy Canadian movement can even begin to make a dent on that front.
It's part of the answer. It is part of the answer. Look, 75% of the exports from the forestry sector historically, New Brunswick goes to the United States. Slightly lower percentages for the country as a whole. The U.S. is trying to shut out our forestry products. Okay, let's be clear. Let's be absolutely clear. And we can do several things in that context. One is, yes, buy Canadian and build more at home. Secondly, diversify internationally, and third, expand what we do with forest products. And of course, all of that is in the context of, in parallel, negotiating with the Americans and trying to get a good deal for the forestry sector. In which case, we are doing other things, or we're prepared to do other things that the Americans want in order for the forest product sector to get greater access. But it's a negotiation. And if I can bring it back to where I started, this is not too strong a word, this is a radically different U.S. trade policy than anything we've seen in our lifetimes, okay? It's radically different. They've changed the rules, or their interpretation of the rules. And that's what we're dealing with. And that's why we need to move fast. That's why this budget is the right budget. That's why we're looking to have $1 trillion of investments. So yes, we have as many jobs as possible in forestry, but we have many more jobs being created elsewhere in New Brunswick and elsewhere across Canada. And at its core, these are all things that we don't have to ask permission for. We don't have, we control, we decide, it's our future, we're taking it, we're moving forward. And then we spend less time on our press conferences in the business suites, around the kitchen table, talking about what the Americans are doing and might do, and just what we're doing to build this great country. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to build this great country.
Dernière question.
Hi, round two.
Round two. Now everyone's going to be upset.
I'm being waved forward.
Yeah.
New Brunswick's looking for $50 million in compensation for the HST holiday of the sort of previous government, and they haven't waived their what they say is their right to that $50 million that they lost in HST revenue. Any prospects of that happening?
Good day.
Dominic knows what I'm talking about.
Dominic knows what you're talking about, and he'll be giving a short press conference later. No, he's not giving a press conference. Actually, I'll be blunt. I don't know the issue. So we had very wide-ranging, productive discussions. She can't raise everything. She has my number. We talk frequently, and now she's gonna have to raise it. So consider it raised. Don't call me. I know the HST thing. I'll run it down. All right. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thank you. This concludes our press conference.